4, 3.
Good evening. Welcome to the City of Westminster's Candidate Forum. My name is Steve Wance. I am the Executive Director of Institutional Advancement and the College Foundation at Carroll Community College, and I'm pleased to be the moderator for tonight's event. This evening's forum is being held at the Community Media Center in Westminster. This program is being streamed live on the Media Center's website at www.carrollmediacenter.org. And it will be rebroadcast on cable channel 19 beginning tomorrow evening, Friday, April 17th at 8 p.m. Because the forum is being recorded, we ask that everyone turn their cell phones off and that attendees to tonight's event refrain from applause or making any noise during the forum or doing anything visible that or audible that might express support or opposition to any candidate during the event. We'll start this evening by introducing you to the candidates. Following their introduction, each candidate will have 2 minutes for an opening statement. And we'll begin with Dr. Mona Becker. Good evening.
Good evening. I'd like to thank everybody for coming out this evening for the community forum, and I'd like to say welcome to the other participants in the forum. I have been a resident of Westminster since 2003. And over that time, I have watched the city grow from a small community when I first arrived here to a very engaged and really wonderful city in which I've grown to love. In January, I took Dennis Frazier's seat on the council. And one of the reasons why I pursued public service is because this is what I believe in. I'm a big believer in giving back to the community in which you live in. And I was honored to be selected in January as Dennis's replacement and have enjoyed my time on the council in the last several months. I'm currently a faculty member at McDaniel College, and so some of the interests that I have is to improve some of that relationship between the college and the town, to make that a little bit better. I have experience in some water backgrounds and will be facing some water issues, which are present and will always continue to be present in the future. And I'm a big believer in the progressive growth of Westminster. We're moving in a great direction right now, and I really think that we have a lot of opportunity for the future. One of the stories I like to relate is when I first moved to Westminster, there was very little that was happening downtown in 2003. And it's been phenomenal to see the change in the city over the last 12 years in which I've been here. I talked to Sandy Ox at the Art Center today, and they had 27,000 people come through the Peep Show for their exhibit over this last week. And just seeing that growth in the city has been so exciting and something that I hope to continue to be a part of for the next 4 years. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, we'd like to welcome Mr. Joe Burns, Jr.
Good evening. Greetings, everyone. My name is Joe Burns. I am a long-term resident of Westminster City, and I have a interest in, again, like my other opponent, public service. And now that I'm retired, I can go forward and devote some more of my time to issues that are going to be happening in Westminster. As we go through the different things that we have going on in Westminster, and there are a lot of good things that are going on, but we have little things that, to me, are a little bit of a problem and an issue. We have citizens that go, for example, to the City Hall for conducting business, and then they get onto the City Hall parking lot, and they have to pay the parking meter there. That's a little bit of an extra tax and a little problem I see in the way you treat your citizens. They're coming to do business with you. You should welcome them. You should not be sitting there getting a backdoor tax on them. We can do better. There's other situations that have come up. We have good employee base in the city. They do a great job, but are they being inspired, and are they also being challenged to come up with different ways to solve problems by the city council in their job overseeing the city operations? I don't think they are, and I think we can do better. That is my campaign theme. We can do better. And we can. We also went through and had a couple of our city councilmen that voted to raise just recently our city taxes from what they were up to originally they wanted 50%. they settled for 33%. Instead of coming up with more creative and wild, maybe, some other way to find a way to solve the problems that we need, rather than going through and raising additional taxes on our citizens. That creativity for those kind of things, we need to look into. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we'd like to introduce Mr. Nathaniel M. Costley, Sr.
Oops.
Yes, ma'am. Hello, everybody. My name is Nathaniel Costley. My background is in helping people. I can remember growing up when Mathers was downtown. I've been a resident of Westminster for about 36 years. I'll be 37 in May. And my grandmother and I used to walk downtown, and those were the days when the railroad tracks and the Rexalls and the Bobby's Hobby Lobbies were in effect. Most of those small businesses have moved away and been taken off by big corporations such as Walmart and Home Depot. So I would like to get back to getting Main Street to the way it used to be. I would also like to see us grow with the infrastructure with regards to technology. But my platform is actually about the kids. Firm believer in the kids. The way to reduce crime is if you train a child in the way he should go, he will never leave. So I would like to see some turf fields here in Westminster. I would like to see some basketball functions. I'd like to build community relations with the police as opposed to just locking the children up and seeing them getting in trouble. We also recently got a park in our backyard on Center Street and Charles Street, but our park has been long overdue for about 30-some years. I'm big on community centers. I'd like to see more community centers come into our neighborhoods, educate. We need to start building a platform where the kids are being educated at an early age and tutoring. I believe the No Child Left Behind Act has gotten away from us, and that diversity in the community is not where it needs to be. So we need to inspire others and become one and unite as one and grow together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our fourth candidate is Mr. Gregory Pecoraro, and he is not with us as yet this evening. So we'll move on to the next candidate, Dr. Robert Wack. Welcome.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. My name is Robert Wack, and I'm running for another term on the City Council. We've achieved a lot over the past several years. The city finances have never been stronger, and I'm very proud of the hard work that we've done, but particularly city staff have done to cut costs and improve city operations to the extent that we have. We have a financial accounting software system that's now starting to yield incredible benefits by showing us where we can do better in terms of efficiency and cost cutting, and our department heads are acting on that. We've also made great progress repairing city infrastructure through our paving program. Some of the worst streets in the city are now much, much better, but still have a lot of work to do. This past winter was brutal on our streets, and you can see that driving around town, so we still have work to do there. But that's what we've achieved in the past, and there's plenty more of that, but we really should be focusing on the future, and that's always been my approach to serving the citizens of Westminster, is thinking about the long-term benefits to improving our community and how we can achieve those improvements for our children and grandchildren. Three big things that we're working on are expanding our park system, and there's some very important big changes that are coming with that. Securing our water supply, which Dr. Becker referred to, which is going to be a concern basically forever, and we need to really watch that closely and develop the policies and procedures to make sure we never have a problem. And then, of course, the fiber project, which we've been working on for several years and is now starting to bear fruit. So these are big things, long-term things, and I think that's how we should approach how we manage the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Wack. And our final candidate tonight is Mr. Paul Whitson. Welcome.
Good evening. I moved to Carroll County in around 1972 and used to live in South Carroll. Graduated from the high school there, South Carroll, in 1974. And my dad was a pastor in that area, and eventually he came to pastor over here in Westminster, and we came over to this area when he retired up in Carrollton Village. 4 years ago, I was elected on a platform that had as its main purpose to lower the tax increase of 33% that the council at the time had laid upon the citizens of Westminster. In that election, 2 council members lost their seats, and 1 member retained his seat with only 10 votes.
It was 11.
11, okay, 11. This sent a clear message to the council that you wanted lower taxes. And for the first 2 years, the message was heeded and taxes were lowered by 1/4 of the amount that they had been raised. This was accomplished by wonderful staff, as Dr. Wack has already alluded to, and found ways to cut costs. They became more efficient, and I'm very proud of them. This resulted for them in a pay raise in the second year of my term, while taxes continued to be lowered. There's much to do in the city, and I'm actively supporting those who keep us safe, as well as various organizations and businesses throughout the city that help make Westminster an even better place to live. I'm very supportive of the fiber program, for which Dr. Wack has been an instrumental part, and I'm hopeful to continue to see growth in the downtown part of the city through various businesses and the vision, which I'm hoping to find more of for the city of where we can go as a united vision. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Here's the format for tonight's forum. I will ask the candidates a series of questions. These are going to be mixed, pre-prepared questions, as well as ones that we receive via email from the public. Members of our audience, you are also invited to write questions on the cards that were provided and hold them up. Someone from the staff will pick that up from you and will deliver it up to me, and we will work those in as well. And I hope that, again, each one of you will assist us in participating in tonight's forum. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer each question. All candidates will answer the identical question. At the conclusion of the question and answer period, each candidate will be given 2 minutes for a summary statement, and we will be timing responses with a signal that is given to you when time runs out. So let's begin with our questions. The first question will begin with you, Mr. Burns. What do you think the single most important issue facing the city of Westminster is today, day one, when the council members take office? And how can you, as a council member, assist in solving that?
Well, our biggest issue, from what I've observed, is the city itself, while it's making some progress, basically it's on autopilot. We need to have a more active council that are going to look around and see what problems need to be resolved and then step in or involve themselves with the department heads to see that they're starting to come up with creative solutions to those problems. Right now, we don't have all the potholes fixed on Main Street. It's April 16th. You just paid your taxes yesterday, but yet your potholes are not being repaired. That's not acceptable. There's got to be ways to solve those problems, and that's just one, but that needs a more creative, more involved central common council to do that, to make that work.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Costley.
I feel the single most concern is the people. They have many issues, such as crime, small businesses, the direction that we're going, their taxes, the fees, the water fees. If your water gets cut off, you have to pay $100 for them to come out. That's one of the things I would like to do away with. Also, I feel like putting more money back into people's pockets. If you take and you think about the direction that we're taking, how do you survive do more with less? And that's what I'm concerned about with the city. Everybody's concerned about money, 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 money. However, I've been out of work for over about 4 years, and I haven't wanted for nothing because I've learned to do more with less. And my wife and I, we have a house, have 3 cars, motorcycle. We have everything we want. But you have to learn how to do more with less and take care of the kids. And if you like I said, if you invest in more in the kids at an early stage, then you won't have to worry about them getting caught on heroin and drugs and ripping and running and tearing up the streets and your stop signs. So my focus is the people.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Wack.
I think the number one challenge facing us is economic development, and all the other solutions to all the other problems that we face, and it's not that we don't have challenges, we do, but everything flows from having a healthy economy. And a healthy economy depends on a healthy infrastructure, and the means to create new jobs, maintain current jobs, and improve the quality of life for the citizens who live here. When our kids get through the Carroll County school system, they need to have a place to work when they graduate, and they need to have good jobs that they can make a decent living so that they can stay here and raise their families close to where they grew up and close to their parents and grandparents. The way to do that is to, again, create the infrastructure that sets the ground for economic growth. So certainly roads are part of that. We have a responsibility to maintain the roads. Paving roads and repairing potholes is a very time-consuming process. Unfortunately, we are blessed with outstanding city staff and now the financial resources to be able to have a dedicated program of attacking that every year. But it takes time. There's no asphalt fairy that goes out and waves a wand and makes potholes disappear. It's human beings holding shovels, carrying hot asphalt, and sometimes in dangerous conditions. And those people are all city employees. And they are hard at work doing that. The other thing that we're doing is, again, building this fiber project. And there's a lot of excitement about that, and we're already starting to see some of the benefits. We're gaining national attention and inquiries from across the country about how this is going to change our community for the better. So economic development is our primary challenge. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whitson?
Yes, I think the thing that we need most in the city is a vision of where the city is going, and to get a group of people together from within the city that can get that united vision for what we can do, especially in the downtown area. Downtown concerns me the most. And I've started going to some business meetings, and I'm looking for people that we could get together from all different facets of the business community as well as other areas, that we could come up with what do we really want to do with downtown. So I'm hoping to get more of those people together over the next few months, and I'm meeting with different groups, and hopefully we can come up with that vision and go for it.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Becker?
I think one of the biggest challenges that's facing Westminster right now as a city is managing our growth that we're experiencing. The population of Westminster has increased, and it will continue to increase, and I think that as a city council, we need to be concerned with how we are going to best manage the city to take advantage of the growth. Certainly part of that is the economic development and the fiber network that Dr. Wack referenced that is going in, has been a huge success to this point in time. And that also comes with managing part of the downtown businesses, bringing some more business back downtown, even though it's been quite successful in the last few years, managing our water supplies as we move forward, so we're ensured that we have the water supplies we need for the growth of the city, because I believe the city is not going to get smaller, and as we move forward progressively, we need to take into account those changes that are going to happen within the infrastructure, the development of new parks, updating some of the roads, and so on. And so I think that's probably one of the main points that we'll be facing in the next several years as a council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question, as we expand the scope a bit and look down the road for the next 4 years, the term that you would be elected for, what do you foresee as the 3 most important issues facing the city over that 4-year period, and how should the city prepare for those challenges? And we'll begin with Mr. Costley.
The 3 things that I see as the most important things that the city needs to focus on in the next 4 years are the infrastructure, the kids, and crime. How do we reduce crime? We educate our kids, we find them something to do, we keep them off the streets. My background is in marketing and strategic planning. I am certified in government contracting, and that's why one of the issues that I have with regards to the fiber optic program is the time it's taking to implement. Is it full and open competition? One of the things that I had, my concerns was that as an employee for the Department of Veteran Affairs, was that contracts was taking too long to implement. They give us a contract and it only takes about 4 to 6 weeks if the money is actually in the bucket. But you have people sitting back not doing what they're supposed to do, and it's more about talk as opposed to action. So the three things that I'm concerned with are how do we get the infrastructure in place now as opposed to 4 years from now. So if I come into office within the first 6 months, I want things done. And community involvement with regards to the kids, and that'll help reduce crime if we keep them out. If we keep them involved and engaged with some things, they won't be out in the streets.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Wack?
Thank you. Top three. First of all, there's more than three, but I'll pick three. And they aren't necessarily, well, I'll just give you three big ones. Certainly the first big one in the next 4 years is the expansion of our park system. We are very close to acquiring a very large parcel of land that's going to add to our park system, and we're going to need to figure out how to use that new parkland in the most beneficial fashion for the most residents. And it's going to be a big challenge, and we're going to need a lot of input from citizens, but it's going to make a huge positive impact on our quality of life here. The second thing is improving the efficiency of city operations. Because of the financial accounting software that we have now, we have lots of new insight into better ways to run city operations and reallocate resources in a more efficient manner. And that's been ongoing, but it will continue over the next 4 years. Then certainly finishing the fiber project on time and under budget is going to be a huge task over the next 4 years. As Dr. Becker said, so far it's doing fantastically. We are right on schedule and right on budget for the first phase, but there's going to be at least four other phases to this, each of which is going to take at least 6 to 9 months, and it's hard work. This is not easy stuff, or we would have done it, and other communities would have done it a long time ago. Other communities aren't doing it, and we are going to be way out in front of not just the state of Maryland, but the entire Mid-Atlantic area. Westminster will be the only community to have this, which will really be a huge advantage for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whitson?
Dr. Wack alluded to some of the things that I thought were important, especially the fiber project is a big deal, and I'm excited about it because it has already attracted some businesses to seek down here, and I'm very excited about that. So I see that being completed as soon as possible. As far as parks go, I'm excited about the park system that we're hopefully going to have, and I'm hoping there'll be some turf fields there at some point as well. But there'll be a lot of community input before all these things come about. And the other thing, I guess, our concern is continuing to find sources of water. Water is a big deal in the whole county. It looks like we're going to have some more things coming on board very soon, which we're very excited about, and that should help also with economic growth because more houses and businesses will be able to move into the area once they have the amount of water that they need for the work and for the homes or the businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Becker?
So this is going to echo a few of the comments that my members of the panel have already made, but one of the things that I would rank up there as being the most important is the business growth that the city will experience, especially with this implementation of the fiber project. that is going in. I think that we can expect to see an increase in the number of businesses that will be wanting to relocate into Westminster City and take advantage of the fiber network that is being in place. The second important issue, I think, is the issue of downtown development. And this is something that I'd really like to see McDaniel College play a little bit of a larger role in with the city as well, in order to assist in moving the downtown forward. As I've mentioned, I think it has come a long way, but we have some improvement that we can make, especially if we take advantage of some of the resources that we have up at the college. And then the third issue that I see over the next 4 years is the water security. This year we're fine, but in 4 years we might not be, depending on how the weather shifts for our area. And so, as Councilman Whitson mentioned, there are some water resources that are coming online and will be online in the future, which will help with business growth, but we do want to make sure that we use them in the best way we can.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Burns.
Yes, hi. Okay, we've talked about a variety of issues that have come up. Certainly, some of them are all related, some of them are not. But if you do not go out and get economic development, you, as a council, as a city managers, don't or encourage that kind of growth and opportunities for the different businesses to come in, you're not going to get it. You're also not going to get it if you don't address the crime problem. We have to have a handle on what crime is doing and what is either going up or going down in the different neighborhoods and address it. We're not as aggressive on that as we should be. We also need to, and all leadership starts from the top. You need to have a more forceful managerial style from your city council, going out, looking at problems, working with the different people that are involved, and seeing what needs to be done and what is being done if it's going the way it should be. If you don't, management, by walking around, is one of the best ways to do business. And I think that the city council should be more involved in doing that. Last city council meeting, we only had one member of the council ask any question of any department head. There's no questions in 2 weeks' time of anything, whether it's progressed, hasn't progressed. That's unacceptable. We need to be much more involved as a city council, what's going on and where it stands. And we should be getting those kind of progress reports each and every council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question, we will begin with Dr. Wack, and that is, what is your view of the economic well-being of the city of Westminster, and how do you think the city of Westminster has weathered the recession?
Well, the economic well-being of the citizens of Westminster, we have a very diverse population, and some citizens have done well during the recession, and some have not. And our challenge as stewards of the city, is to make sure that everybody does well, and we have work to do there, hence my concern about economic development. The real estate market took a big hit from the 2008-2009 downturn, and all of the industries associated with that also took a hit. Construction industry, all the trades associated with that. We've also had problems with growth in that area because of our water constraints. So there is I can't make an easy generalization saying we're doing great, we're doing bad. It's a mix. And, but our focus needs to be on everybody, not just one particular segment. And so again, hence my focus on the large picture, big, broad scale efforts to change the playing field and change the underlying dynamics of how our economy works. And I believe the fiber project's going to do that. It's going to take a while. It's going to take years for all of those benefits to be fully realized. But we've taken the first difficult steps. And again, we are way out in front of not just our local regional community, but the rest of the country. There's only about 100 communities around the entire United States that are even attempting this. And we have joined that elite group and will be reaping the benefits of that for generations.
Thank you. Mr. Whitson?
Yes. Again, I think the economic development is so important, and we have been going through a very difficult time downtown. You just walk down there, you'll see it. It's part of the reason why I've been going to various business meetings trying to get involved with the whole vision. And I think that the fiber project is definitely part of that vision for downtown. I know some businesses have done very, very well, but others been very poor. And part of it is just because, you know, the city's changing. So I'm very hopeful as they continue to work with the vision that we'll be able to come up with ideas that can help the people, especially in the downtown area, to spur the economic development.
Thank you. Dr. Becker?
As Dr. Wack mentioned, there isn't an easy answer to this one. Parts of the city are doing well. Parts are doing a little bit worse. But, you know, when you look through Westminster and you look around Westminster, the downtown area has been stable, at least from my perspective, for the last year or two. There's been some good businesses that have remained down there. Some have switched hands, and we've had some new ones that have come in. Residentially, the number of houses that have been for sale has seemed to gone down in our neighborhood, and so we have more people moving into the area, and so on. And so I think for weathering the recession, I think that we have been pretty good as a city. Then we've come out on top of what we could have been a much worse situation. Thanks.
Thank you. And Mr.
Steve,
Burns?
would you repeat the question for the audience benefit?
Sure. What is your view of the economic well-being of the city of Westminster, and how do you think the city of Westminster has weathered the recession?
Well, I think we did an adequate job, but I do think we've suffered from the depression that we're actually in, recession, whatever you want to call it. But I also think that we do need to take a look. Just ride down Main Street, go through the mall, see how many stores are closed, see how many people are not in the parking lots. We need to then step up our game. Yes, the different projects that are in place may help, but there's over 3,000 jurisdictions in the state of Maryland that are not having the fiber project, and they're surviving. What are they doing that we're not doing, or what are they doing that we can add to our portfolio? We've got to look at different areas and opportunities out there. We've got to also get a spirit into the city where we are selling Westminster and also putting energy into the city, so we'll do better. We have to help. We have to also have a lot of the assistance from our citizens, which we do not necessarily encourage, but we should. They've got answers and ideas that will maybe not be able to implement it immediately, but there are good ideas out there, and the only way to know that is for them to come out and tell us and volunteer. On that note, thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Costley.
I believe our economic situation is rough from the top down. I think we could all do better. Those who have money, they're afraid to spend it. That's one of the reasons that the malls don't have the businesses as open like they should. When you go downtown, you see a lot of things that's going, a lot of vacant lots. It is cheap to live in Westminster. However, with all the fees that come with Westminster, they're charging you late fees for your water, utilities, property tax extremely high, business tax. If you want to open up your own business, there's a tax everywhere. So what little money you do bring in and you think you're making it, as they say, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, to put the money in somebody else's pocket. I'm a firm believer that you do more with less. And if we stop taking and start developing, like in our neighborhood, a 4-bedroom townhouse is only worth about $114,000, but you take that same townhouse and you put it out in a non-urban market, it's worth about $265,000. Why? Because they haven't addressed the crime, they haven't educated the children, the parks, the streets we're the last ones on the street to get cleaned out when the snow. I know we have a lot of snow going, but we got to be diverse in our situation. We can't forget about the people. We have to have open hands, share everything. You can't be ethnocentric. Just because you're not a part of me culturally, you're a part of the city, and we are one, so we need to grow as one.
Thank you. think as a good follow-up to that question, I'm going to go with a question that was generated through the audience here at the Community Media Center. And this question, we will begin with you, Mr. Whitson. How will the council be able to assist small businesses to ensure that they remain operational and encourage others to open?
I know that there are incubator projects that we've been able to get funding from. I'm not sure if it's state or county, but those are some ways, or one of the ways that we're trying to help businesses. There are possibly use of some incentives that we could, and if the businesses come to us and ask, perhaps there's ways that we can assist them as far as the taxes go. So those would be, I guess, 3 things that come to mind.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Becker.
To echo just a little bit of what Councilman Whitson had mentioned, certainly if small businesses that are interested to get started in the city, to please come to the City Council and talk to us about what we can do to help them get started as a business downtown. But the second part of your question is the one I'd like to address a little bit more about what to enable them to succeed downtown. And I think that part of the strength is what the City Council has been able to do is the downtown events that have been happening. We host several downtown events throughout the course of the year, and if you are downtown for any of the events, the Starlight Shopping, the Electric Parade, the Flower and Jazz Festival is coming up. There's a wine stroll on the 26th where businesses downtown are hosting wineries in their shops. That is how the City of Westminster can help enable the businesses to stay in business downtown. And so I think many of those community events that the city has been helping to implement downtown, bringing people downtown to Westminster to remind them that this is where you shop, this is where you live in your neighborhood. Again, going back to the Peep Show at the Arts Center, which was a great success this year, I'm sure brought plenty of business downtown. And so bringing our residents downtown throughout the entire year is one way in which we can really enable those businesses to stay in business. Thanks.
Mr. Burns.
Yes, economic development depends on a lot of different things. It's a stew that you mix, put in different ingredients. One of those ingredients is if you lower the taxes in the city, if you lower some of the regulations that are involved in a business trying to get started, so first of all, allow those businesses, just from very basic, to concentrate on building and keeping their businesses going because they don't have to worry about all the paperwork. Now, all the regulations that come out are not all Westminster City. You certainly have others, and we can't affect those. But the ones we can affect, we can lower those, we can cut those rates. The one friend of mine who's in business with a lunch shop around the corner, she was telling me the water rates are way out of line. She can't afford them. It's a huge burden on her business. And then on top of it, all the other regulations, and her personal gripe, which I relate, is a personal property tax that it gets put on every piece of equipment that she's ever bought. Well, that kind of thing, it's progressive and regressive. It keeps on going. Eventually, it's going to kill you. So you will need to look at those kind of things from the other side of the aisle, and asking what those businesses need to help them. They'll tell you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Costley.
I would echo some of those same sentiments. My main concern is what I would do is lower the barriers to entry, expand the type of businesses that can come into the downtown area, so increase segmentation. I know that I was looking online at some of the meetings, and there was a business that wanted to sell cars downtown. Question is, why can't they sell cars downtown? I believe we need public transportation, some type of, I remember we used to have the Carroll County cab. Now we don't have, we have a cab service, but we need some type of public transportation downtown so that people can commute back and forth. I know that the nightlife downtown after 8, 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night is you have Johansson's, you have Raphael's, and I think you have another establishment around the corner. But we have to do more to support not only the day life, but the nightlife. So one of the things you need to do is reduce taxes, check what the costs that they're actually putting out, the monies that they're actually putting out, and work with them. Stop trying to take all their profits and their proceeds. Give back. So those are some of the things that I would do.
Thank you. And finally, Dr. Wack.
So the City of Westminster has been working with small businesses for years. Mayor Ferguson started it when he was mayor with regular meetings with small businesses. Mayor Utz continued that and actually increased it. He now has a regular small business, Main Street Business Roundtable, and many productive initiatives have come out of those meetings. So the city has a very good relationship with small businesses, and it's getting better. And we get lots of great ideas from them that we work hard to implement. But the key thing to remember with small businesses and helping them succeed is they have to have customers. For any business, if you don't have customers, you don't have revenue. If you don't have revenue, it doesn't matter what your expenses are, the business will fail. So what the city can do most effectively to help any business succeed on Main Street or anywhere else in the city is to do things that will bring customers to the city, to downtown, so that they can spend money in whatever the businesses are. We do this a number of different ways. One is, as Dr. Becker stated, and she's absolutely right, is by having events. And we've had huge success with that recently. We are gradually increasing the number of events that we have in the city, whether it's the Celtic Canner, the Peep Show that we help the Arts Council perform, Flower and Jazz Festival, Art in the Park, the various other festivals. We have Fall Festival. So all of these things bring people to downtown, bring people to Main Street, and it's a gradual effect. We've got some new businesses. Jeannie Bird Bakery is a huge success. So helping people see the beautiful, attractive things about downtown, bringing them there so then they can see our businesses and then spend money there. I think that's the best thing we can do to help small businesses.
Thank you. Our next question will begin with Dr. Becker. What impact do you think the coming state and county budget reductions will have on the city's finances? And name one thing that you would work toward that would improve the city's financial condition.
So the state and county budget reductions are happening, right? And the city will be impacted in one way or another by the budgets that are passed at the state and at the county level. I think we will weather them. Okay, I know at our last council meeting, in a council meeting prior when we talked about our budget, the budgets are being analyzed and we haven't gotten a report yet. We have a budget working group meeting that's coming up very shortly. We'll be going over the city budget and we'll have sort of a better picture of what's going on at that point in time. But how can improve the city condition for that? That's a little bit of a harder question to answer until we have a really good look at the city budget when we start to look at where our numbers fall next week. Our budget is pretty stable right now. I see that, for the future, our budget's going to be very flat. We don't have any large increases or any outlays of money that's coming out in the future or so on. And so I think that we're just probably going to be weathering this as best as we can with regards to what the numbers come in for next week for the council.
Thank you. Mr. Burns.
Yes. Well, first of all, we're in a bad position when we have to depend on the actions of others that are outside of our control at the state level or at the county level. We should strive, we may not be right now, but we should strive to be self-sufficient so that any of the decisions that are made and affect our life here in Westminster are as much as possible under our control. Because if we can't control them, then if they decide to do something horrendous one way or the other at each level, then we feel the impact. That's not right. That doesn't put those issues under our purvey, and we could be doing a great job at the city council level, and then all of a sudden all those plans are thrown out the window because of the actions of somebody down in Annapolis. So our overall philosophy and plan should be to try to become completely self-sufficient, or at least as much as possible, so that we get away from those kind of trends. I thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Costley.
I watched my grandmother raise 7 kids and about 5, 6 grandkids on $720 every 2 weeks. We never wanted for nothing. We had food, clothes, shelter, and everything. My wife and I both have our MBAs and undergrads in business administrations. We have one income. However, we want for nothing. We actually give more out to the people of the community, and my wife fusses at me about it sometimes because I'm giving more than we have sometimes. But like I told her, when we moved to Westminster, my grandmother passed away in 2009, and we actually got hit by the banking scheme, that Countrywide and Bank of America. And a $600 home went up to $1,800 a month. So for the last 4 years, we've been paying $1,800 a month for our mortgage, and we've still made it. And when my wife moved up here, my wife said, well, we can't afford that. I said, yes, we can. She said, well, how are we going to do it? And I said, we got faith, and we got more than most. So if given the budget of Carroll County, I've already learned and been taught over the years how to do more with less. So we'll go from good to great. Thank you.
Dr. Weck.
So there's a couple of elements to that question. The first is the money we get from the county we get it through something called the Town-County Agreement. And that amounts to about $800,000 a year that we get from the county for services that the city renders to county citizens, parks and rec, roads, even some police aid. So this is a transfer of money back to the city from county tax revenues. We actually don't get back as much as our citizens pay in county taxes. So there's a fundamental imbalance there that we address often with the county, but we haven't made much progress. The second thing is the state revenues. Those are substantial, and they have been substantial in the past, and they are very variable. So the two big ones there are public safety grants and the highway user fees. In the past, we got up to $1.2, $1.3 million a year from the state of Maryland for highway user fees, and that was cut to almost zero back 6, 7 years ago, and it was a crisis. And Mr. Burns is absolutely correct. We do need to strive to be financially self-sufficient, which is precisely the reason we raised taxes back in 2010. Because of those cuts to those outside funding sources, we had massive deficits, and we had to fix that hole somehow. And the only long-term solution that was available was to raise taxes. Not pleasant, not popular, but it was the right thing to do at the time, and it has proven to be the right thing to do since then because we now have more stable city finances. Going forward, the way to ensure that stability continues is through reserves, accumulating reserves to make sure that we have stability in uncertain times. That's what any good business does, and that's what the city is working toward. We do have much better reserves now, but we still have more work to do.
Thank you. And Mr. Whitson.
Yes. Having not seen what the state is going to do this year at this particular point, I really don't know that we're not going to get more in certain areas or get less. I believe that actually the highway user fees might be a little bit more thanks to some of the work that was done there. I agree that we need to do more with less, and I believe that the staff has done more with less, and they continue to improve that with some things that have already been alluded to as well. The mayor has made it his #1 priority for us to become self-sufficient, and I'm thankful that he's done that and that we work towards that. So I think we're on our way, and hopefully with increased business, other types of things through the fiber project and other things, we'll be able to get even more self-sufficient than we are.
Okay, thank you. Our next question will begin with you, Mr. Burns, and we're going to use a question, again, that was generated through the audience here. The wastewater treatment plant upgrade is a very costly project. How will the city pay for this?
Well, that's going to be one of the challenges that's come up through several answers from the other candidates, and that's something that's going to need to be taken a look at. I am not as familiar with that issue specifically because I'm not on the council and haven't seen the documentation involved, But certainly, we have the issue with Wakefield Valley. We need to look into that and see how that progresses. But we also have to go forth and look at alternative sources and try to find some permanent solution, if there is one, temporary solution otherwise, to try to resolve that. But it's always going to be a problem. Water is how everybody works in their houses for everything from the dishwasher through baths, and we've got to have a steady supply. So we're just going to have to try to find a creative solution.
Okay. Mr. Costley?
Well, I'm going to go back to the way I was raised. I listened to my grandmother many times yell at me about taking long showers, and I'm like, Granny United, well, I just got in here. So we have to educate, we have to work together, we have to tell each other, save water, possibly build another a water plant. But it's all about saving. You don't need to, we have enough. We just have to manage it properly. If we manage it properly and work together, we'll be able to maximize our resources. So that's the way I would do it, by educating the people and telling them our problem and also listening to their problem. If we listen to them, maybe they'll listen to us and they'll do more around their house to conserve water.
Thank you. Dr. Wack?
Yes. So the wastewater treatment plant upgrade is going to end up being the single largest capital project that the city has ever done in its history, even bigger than the water treatment plant upgrade that we did several years ago, and even bigger than the fiber project. What the total cost is, we don't know yet because it's still being engineered, but it's going to be a lot. And the key point to make sure everybody understands is this is not something we have a choice about doing. This is something that is the city is mandated to do by regulations from higher level agencies. So we've been working on it for years, and it has to happen. And so that's the bad news. The good news is the majority of it will be paid for by grants and loans from those higher level agencies. And then there will also be funds that the city has to contribute that will be paid through water and sewer fees. So that's another important point to realize, is that the water system, the sewer system, and the rest of the city are all funded through different funding sources. They are all what are called enterprise funds. And each enterprise fund has to have its own revenue source, its own balanced budget. So even though the wastewater treatment plant upgrade is going to be the biggest capital project in the city's history, it will not affect the finances of the general fund. It will affect the water and sewer rates, and which is one of the many reasons why water and sewer rates have gone up over the years, is that, again, our infrastructure is old. Parts of the city water system are well over 100 years old, and parts of it fail. And we need to set aside monies to repair those things, as well as ongoing maintenance, as well as these upgrades that are required by regulations from other agencies. So it's a big project, it's very complicated, it's very expensive, but we have it well in hand, and we have a process in place to make sure it gets paid for.
Thank you. Mr. Whitson?
Even though the fees have gone up, it could have been a whole lot more, and I want to give a special praise to Jeff Glass, who's the head of our Department of Public Works, as he negotiated from just several $1 million that the state was going to give us to double-digit millions. So it's nothing compared to what it could have been, and I'm just very thankful for his work on that. The rates actually, I believe, are different inside the city from outside, and those outside the city limits are also paying for this, and they pay a little bit more. So that helps as far as the funding goes. And other things that are being done, Mr. Glass has gotten some robotic units that are finding the leaks, some pretty high-tech stuff. So we hope that it hurts, but because the Maryland Department of Environment said you've got to do it, we have no choice. So we're doing as much as we can.
Thank you. And Dr. Becker?
Dr. Wack and Councilman Whitson are absolutely correct that this is a mandate from the Maryland Department of the Environment to upgrade our wastewater plant, which is different from the drinking water plant. So this is the plant where all your waste goes from your house for an enhanced nitrogen removal. And so I've spent quite a bit of time with Mr. Jeff Glass out at the wastewater treatment plant, and I've looked over some of the plans for the plant as well. It is a very expensive project, as Dr. Wack said, but we're stuck with this one. This is something that is mandated that must be done. And as also is mentioned, the infrastructure at the plant is quite a bit old. The good news is that they're able to use the existing facility, so we don't have to build an entire new facility for a wastewater treatment plant, which could have been even more expensive. They will be retrofitting some of the tanks out at the new plant. Parts of it will be torn down and rebuilt, but in the end, we'll have not only a better wastewater treatment plant that meets Maryland's Department of the Environment regulations, but a plant that can, in the future, help with the economic growth in the city. Right now, the wastewater treatment plant is pretty maxed out with the amount of waste that it receives from the city. And so if you go out and talk to them at the plant, you find out when we have a heavy rainstorm, when everyone is using the water in their houses that's running into the wastewater treatment plant, they're running at capacity. And so when this is done, this will enhance our ability to grow economically within the city as well. And funding again through grants and loans from different sources for the bulk of this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Many of you have mentioned the broadband fiber optic project. And the next question is a combination of a pre-prepared question as well as one from an audience participant here this evening. The city has made a major commitment to the broadband fiber project to connect every residence in the city to high-speed fiber optic cable, recently completing a pilot project. By what measurement will you determine its success? And then as a follow-up to that, does the city have a backup plan for growth if the fiber optic network is not as successful as we had hoped? And we'll start with Mr. Costley.
My first concern with the fiber optic program is that it's great to be a first mover. However, when you are the first mover in certain things and other people aren't where you are, the compatibility and the structure. And I've heard a lot about the wastewater treatment facility, the importance of that. That's the issue that I have. If we're devoting so much time and attention to being next generation, next tier, creating infrastructure, what about the water plant? Why aren't we focused? We should be more focused on that as opposed to fiber optic. So if I was to come in, I'd be on board with it. However, my concern would be the water treatment facility plant, because without that, we can't function.
Thank you. Dr. Wack.
So the two benchmarks that we're going to be using to measure the success of the fiber project, one is a sort of short-term, narrow view one, and one is a longer-term, broader view one. The short-term, narrow view one is to make sure that the project breaks even. You know, that's what our goal is in structuring our contract with our partner, and that's how we have planned for it in terms of the city finances. And we're very confident that that's going to happen because of the terms we successfully negotiated and the extensive modeling we did and looking at other communities that have done this, the ways that they've succeeded and the ways that they have failed. And we have put in a lot of work making sure that we don't replicate any of the mistakes that have been made so far. But that's a great question. Well, what if that doesn't work? Well, of course, we have to have contingency plans. And the contingency plans are to do better what we're already doing, which is continuing to work with Main Street businesses, but most importantly, the quality of life issues and events. You know, our long-term goal is to get to a point where we're having, 40, 50 events either in the city or nearby the city in a calendar year. And it's very ambitious, but we're making great progress because it's events that, again, draw people in, improve their quality of life, and make people say, wow, Westminster is a really nice place to live. That's going to make them want to move here. It's going to drive up property values. It's going to make them want to come downtown and spend money at Main Street businesses. So, but I'm very confident that the fiber project is going to be a success. So then we'll have two ways that we're improving the economy.
Thank you. Mr. Whitson.
We weren't really the first. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I forgot the long-term one. Job growth, companies moving to the area and job creation. That's our long-term measure. Sorry, Paul.
That's okay. We all forget things.
Yes, we do.
I sure do. One thing that was mentioned earlier says we were first. We weren't first, and Dr. Wack has alluded to the fact that we weren't first. We did study others, and I'm thankful for those studies, and I imagine people will learn from us because we'll probably make some mistakes too. But I really think that fiber is the way of the future and that it will bring in things. But if it doesn't, there are other things we're working on at the same time. You know, as I said, I desire for a group to have a real vision for the city of where we can go, and talking with the businesses just as we are right now at the roundtables and other types of things. We'll continue to talk with residents. I can go around and talk with residents. I talk with business people all the time. So, you know, there's nothing, you know, it's not in a vacuum, the fiber. So we're constantly looking for other ways. We aren't just doing one thing. And of course, the events, as I mentioned, I really love what Abby Gruber has done and the whole Rec and Parks Department. They continue to do more and more things. And as I have been going around and talking to the residents, a lot of them has expressed just how much they love some of the new things. So I think we'll continue to work at doing new things downtown.
Thank you. Dr. Becker.
I have no doubt that the broadband project is going to be a huge success for the city of Westminster. Just the buzz that I have heard from among people that I know are very excited about the project, from the 2 pilot projects out at near Carroll Lutheran Village, and then out at the Air Park Industrial Center. And I have friends that are coming up to me asking them when it's going to be coming to their neighborhood next, that they have heard quite a bit about it. My only disappointment is, Dr. Wack will probably laugh at me, is that I think my neighborhood is the last to receive the broadband when it reaches its final stages of implementation in Westminster. So I don't have any doubt that that's going to be a big success for the city of Westminster. Already in the pilot projects, it's shown that we have enough people interested in obtaining the broadband through their provider to make it viable to move forward with the next stages of the project. And then that leads to the economic growth. And the economic growth leads to a greater tax base in the city of Westminster. And so I think that that's the long-term outlook for the broadband project. A contingency plan just has been mentioned. You know, Westminster is a downtown, vibrant community. More and more people are coming downtown. Businesses are coming without the broadband, even though that is a big incentive for many of them to come and relocate to this area. And as we start to grow, I think it'll even improve that farther. Thanks.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Burns.
Yes, excuse me. Well, like my grandmother used to say, use one of your references, the proof is in the pudding. The project's already begun and is well on its way. Will it be an economic benefit or not? Costs versus the benefits? We'll see. We'll find that out in the future. Certainly as part of the infrastructure that we have to deal with in the city, and you do need to have a good infrastructure for everybody in general. But you have to look at the costs and see where that fits in the overall scheme. We've got money invested in improving that. We've got money invested in improving the Westminster water treatment plant. But we also had enough money apparently to float a loan of $100 million for Carroll Lutheran Village for a project that wasn't even in this city, much less the county. So we've got some things there that we have to take a look at. Priorities are important. You do need to have a vision, you do need to have a plan, but you also need to stick to doing the regular general things, the boring things, that you need to keep moving the ball forward on a regular basis. And I think we have to also make sure what our jobs are and what our job duties are as city councilmen, and stay within those parameters and not go outside the box. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next question will begin with you, Dr. Wack. The City of Westminster has entered an agreement with the owner of the Wakefield Valley Golf Course, which will result in the city receiving 160 acres of property, the clubhouse, various outbuildings, and the historic 1797 property. What are your thoughts as to how the city should use this property and how would that use be financed?
That is an excellent question. So the first thing to make sure that everybody understands about this is that this was the result of extensive negotiations over a long period of time that have resulted, or will result, because this is not final yet, but will result in a fantastic windfall for the city. So all of those things that you mentioned, all those assets that are going to become city assets, we are getting for nothing. So we are getting these assets for free. Now, there are some contingencies associated with this, water, et cetera, et cetera. But that's the first big thing, is that this was a huge victory for the city, and it was a result of the mayor's hard work, city staff, and some members of the council that participated in the negotiation. So that does raise the question, though, is what are we going to do with these buildings? What are we going to do with this land? And how are we going to pay for it? And the honest answer right this second is, I don't know, because it's so big and so complicated that we are going to need a lot of help. So we've already started talking with the county, we've started talking with state agencies, and we are beginning the process of putting together a citizen advisory group of the neighborhoods surrounding the golf course to get their input, because this is going to be part of their neighborhood, and we want to make sure that whatever plans we make fit in with what they think they want in their neighborhood. But it's also going to be a regional asset. This is going to be something for the entire citizens, all the citizens of the entire city of Westminster, as well as the county as well, and which is why we feel strongly that the county needs to be brought into this to both give us guidance and also assist with resources. But we haven't gotten any specifics yet about where these resources are going to come from. But it's going to be substantial. There's a lot of renovation that needs to be done out there. We need to look at some innovative uses for those buildings and make sure that we take care of that historic structure, the old colonial structure that's on the golf course. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whitson.
This is a big deal, and it will affect the city, hopefully in a very positive light for a very long time. As Dr. Wack mentioned, there's water that's going to be coming with this as long as MD approves it all, which I believe we're very close if we haven't gotten it done yet. But because of that water, the builder will actually be able to build some homes. He has up to 220 homes, I believe, on the other side of town, not in that community. They'll be able to build, and that should bring in money to increase our tax base. That'll be part of what will help pay for the renovations and things like that. I know a desire, especially of one of the members of the council, is for there to be turf fields there. And if we get a good turf field system over there, there are people right now that are going down to Baltimore County and Howard County that this is much closer to. So we should be able to get some revenues out of that as far as paying for things. And of course, the county will benefit from that, as Dr. Wack already alluded to. And we do want lots of community input, and I know that there'll be plenty of people, especially those surrounding that area, and that will, I'm sure, come to the meetings as we give input to make best use of the land.
Thank you. Dr. Becker.
This is a huge piece of property, and so not only will it bring some additional water to the city, and again increase the tax base has already been mentioned, but it's 160 acres of green space that we get to do something with. And so, like Dr. Wack mentioned, we're looking for ideas right now. The environmentalist in me wants to see a native plant reforested area that's out in the park, or a wetland reforested area, or some sort of nature park. But it's so large that we can do that, and we could put in a turf field. We just want to make it something that the residents of the city of Westminster will want to use, where we'll be able to draw people into the city to come to use the facilities and then remain there either downtown or visit for an extended period of time. Right. Thanks.
Mr. Burns.
Steve, can you repeat the question for the audience?
Sure. The City of Westminster has entered an agreement with the owner of the Wakefield Valley Golf Course, which will result in the city receiving 160 acres of property, the clubhouse, various outbuildings, and the historic 1797 property. Do you have any thoughts as to how the city should use this property, and how would that use be financed?
Well, that's part of the trick question. Certainly, the city has needs, certainly the water, and potentially maybe some of the other resources involved. But realistically, my question is, why would the city be in the owning of property situation, renovating buildings, and doing things that have nothing to do with city government as far as it goes? Yes, we do want to increase the tax base, and that's perfectly fine. There's also private means and people that will do that. The city government is not designed to be a developer. It's not their job. Their job is to govern the city and do the different projects and needs that the citizens require. But there's other people that can do that better, and we're going to be renovating a historic location. I don't see the need or the reason that the city should be involved in that project. Yes, buy what we can, the water rights and the some of the property we might be able to turn into parks or something as necessary. The rest of it, it's not our job. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Costley.
First of all, I think you got to hear what the people want. So whatever the people want, you should give. What I would do is, I love turf fields, I love football, I love the kids and everything, but we have to do something. You have Carrollton Village right up the street. Where are the hospitals? We got one hospital in almost all of Carroll County, like Carroll County Hospital. It's backed up. We need another hospital. And this is the first I've heard of that. So the question I have is, the current council members, it only took me 5 minutes to think of that we needed a new hospital. There are a whole lot of things we need other than fiber optic. I didn't want to speak about, I was going to speak about it earlier, but the fiber optic system's been out for about 8 to 10 years almost, because Verizon has brought it out. And by the time we get it implemented, they'll have something else out. So let's focus on, as I forgot your name, sir. Joe, right, said, let's focus on the things of city council, what they need to do, what the people really want. Like, it's okay to develop and grow, but we have to ask the people what they really want and find out what their needs are, and stop trying to make Westminster something, the next Baltimore City or Howard County.
Thank you. All right, our next question will begin with you, Mr. Whitson. After being under the consent order from MDE limiting water allocations for the past 9 years, the city has several potential water sources about to be permitted by MDE. What should be the process for allocating these scarce resources?
Well, it's funny that you should ask that because we just passed a water allocation process. And this will be done according to that particular process. So I don't know what else to say except read the water allocation process that we just did. So.
Okay.
Great.
Dr. Becker.
Sorry.
Yeah, we actually just, this was the subject of the last few city council meetings that we were at, where we talked about the water allocation process of the water sources that the city has, with a focus on business and receiving 60% of the water resources and residential, new residential for the 40% of the water resources, in order to encourage business growth within the city. And so that had been decided within the last several meetings.
Mr. Burns.
Yes. First of all, it's a done deal. So this time around, there's nothing that's going to be affected. It was passed at the Monday night council meeting. So it's sort of done. So right now, we can't really do much. We can go ahead next time around and take a better look at how it's allocated, and it will certainly be by the demands of the city at that point in time. But right now, it's over with.
Mr. Costley.
I would look at it, evaluate it, look for ways to improve it. I don't believe anything's ever sketched in stone. I believe you can always make changes. So if there are areas for improvement, I will look at it, bring them up, and hopefully we can raise for modification. However, until I look at it, I can't answer it. But I know that I would look at it and assess it, analyze it, and conduct a SWOT analysis based upon what's already been done.
Thank you. And Dr. Wack.
So the way the water allocation policy is going to work is, well, I guess the first thing that everybody needs to understand is that even though we own these water sources, we do not control how much we can take out of them. That is something that is determined through a permitting process through the Maryland Department of the Environment. And for the last several years, the Maryland Department of the Environment has told us, you have no extra water to give out. Now, because of the development of these new sources, we are starting to get new permitted sources, which we then can distribute to new users. So the way the allocation policy is going to work is, as we are given these permitted allotments, so they come in volumes, 10,000 gallons, 20,000 gallons, we are going to divvy that up over several years. And our working time frame is 5 years. So we say, we get a permit for 50,000 gallons, then it would be 10,000 gallons a year. And then that would be divided between two uses: commercial and industrial use, and residential use. And we purposely made the commercial industrial use bucket, so to speak, bigger because we want to make sure that when a large employer moves to town, that we will have sufficient water to allow them to move forward with their project. But even in the residential bucket, even though it's smaller than the commercial industrial bucket, there will be sufficient water in that bucket for pretty much any residential developer as they develop their projects to have water to move forward. If any water in either bucket isn't used in a given year, it rolls forward to the next year and it is available then. We do have an emergency process where we could move water from one bucket to the other bucket if we need be. But the point is that the water allocation policy, it's a budget. It's a budget for a scarce resource that's going to remain a scarce resource forever. So just like we watch our money very carefully and have budgets for that, we have a budget now for our water and will forever going forward.
Could I just add one thing?
Sure.
Since I didn't take all my time, because I was a little bit slow on the uptake there. But to something that he just said, the water allocation, we have reserves on that as well. We are trying to be very, very careful with it so that we don't get to the point that we were before. So there actually is several, I think it's close to 100,000 gallons if we get what we think we're going to get. It's going to be a substantial amount, so if we have some emergencies, we can meet those. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question is directed to you, Dr. Becker. And I will paraphrase. This is from one of the audience questions that's come in. What are the public transportation goals for the city?
What are the public transportation goals of the city, probably versus what are the public transportation goals for me? As far as the city public transportation goals, the specific goals I'm not aware of for the city. Personally, I do think that the city lacks public transportation. I know that the transit system that exists is very small. It's not adequate, but yet I'm not quite sure that we would have the ridership that would demand a larger public transportation system. From my background, I am a fan of mass transportation, of public transportation. I'm not sure if the size of our city demands that at this point in time. And so I think it's something that if we want to pursue as a city council would need quite a bit of research into that topic and take citizen comments and concerns into account as we do that. But thank you.
Mr. Burns.
Yes. Oops. Well, I'm not aware of any real need at this point in time for a city mass transit of any type. Certainly, it may be something we might need. If it does, then it would be something to look at and then address as necessary. But realistically, we have CATS that's providing transportation now, so why have a redundant system? Right now, I don't think it's any need. There may be, but right now, I would not be in favor of it, and I don't think we have a plan for it as it is. Thank you very much.
Mr. Costley?
I'm 37, and I remember when I was about 18 or 19, they started talking about extending the light rail from Owings Mills to Westminster. However, their biggest concern was crime, that crime would come from Baltimore. And like I said before, and I'll say it again, if people want to get here, they're going to get here. So, believe it or not, they're here. We need mass transportation. I know my wife, she gets up sometimes at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning just so she can get home at 4:35 because I'm fussing. If we're not in the house because we got sports, we got A, B, C, X, Y, and Z to do. And the kids need, I believe mass transportation will help families. It'll help bring businesses out here. We need, because we shop for a lot of our clothing in Woodlawn, Baltimore. Sometimes you're just tired. Nobody wants to ride up and down 140. 140 is congested. I know they put the overpass up in off of 30. And my mother-in-law, she wakes up at about 6:30 so she can come some mornings to put my son on the bus and pick up my other son. So we travel from Randallstown to Westminster to Manchester, and mass transportation would do a great justice. So I know we have the CATS program, but CATS just got recently taken over by Butler, and they took they're out there fussing and fighting. So I think we need to build relationships and do a better job of, once again, doing more with less. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Wack?
Thank you. I agree with Mr. Costley. I think he's absolutely right. Mass transit, there is a need for mass transit, and communities that have mass transit do better. It's another resource. It's another piece of infrastructure. The question is this a city problem, or is this a county problem, or is it a regional problem? And I would suggest that this is a regional problem. And that because the transit solutions are going to have to extend outside both Westminster and also Carroll County. So it's not a problem that affects just Westminster. So it needs to be looked at a larger level. The other question is do we have the resources, and how high a priority is it for the city relative to the resources we have? And I would say that it is important, but it is not as high a priority as many other priorities that the city faces, and that we absolutely do not have the resources to apply to mass transit by ourselves, or even at all, depending on what the proposal was. So, I think it's very much an important thing. It's something that we should be part of the conversation for, but it is absolutely not a problem that the city can or should try to solve on its own.
Thank you. Mr. Whitson?
I could not agree with Dr. Wack even more, and that is amazing for me sometimes, because we tend to disagree a lot in meetings. I believe it is a regional thing. Anytime you work with MTA, if you go down Baltimore and you look at what their budget is and how much the city puts into it, they never get the money back. And that's a very, very large city, so we've got to be fiscally responsible. I think as part of the vision for the city, being put into part of the vision for the county and for the region is very important. So again, we go back to vision. Can we do it? I just pretty much say amen to what Dr. Wack said.
Thank you. The next question will begin with you, Mr. Burns. We have been through a very tough winter with extreme cold weather, numerous snow events. How do you think the city survived the winter in terms of its fiscal responsibility, as well as the needed repairs to roads and alleys?
Well, we're still here, and I actually have not yet taken my snow shovels off my front porch. But I think we did okay. It's kind of hard to tell because it was expensive. But the other side is we still have more expense because there's still a lot of potholes around, a lot of repairs that need to be done and have not been finished as of yet. So that's an ongoing situation. It's still in flux. Like every winter, we're going to make our best chance to get through it and dig out the different people and side streets that they need to. But you can't control the weather, unfortunately. And you just make the best plans you can after the fact and try to balance the money around as needed. We did okay. A little bit less snow would be nice. I'm just throwing out.
Mr. Costley.
It goes back to planning. The type of shopper I am, today I actually went in Walmart. We're getting ready to get summertime, and I found a snowblower for $128. It was a $500 snowblower. I have a snowblower in my backyard, and that wasn't even for me. That's for my mother-in-law, so she doesn't have to shovel snow. But I think we did a horrible job with regards from top down. Like, there were times this winter where I went out and shoveled my backyard out, like my driveway and everything, only to have the city come and block me straight in. I had to call several times, fuss with the city about it, but it's all about planning, pre-planning, looking at what the people, if you know, alleys are last to get to, but if you know this family uses, this is their primary source of roadway to get in and out, then you have to plan that accordingly. Well, maybe I won't worry about this part of that alley, I'll worry about this alley first. So it was times where it wasn't until the next day after we've already cleaned up our driveway, made our way out, only to be plowed back in. So what I'm looking at is we had a lot of snow, a lot of people were out. I'm cognizant of that and I'm concerned of that, but we have to be more compassionate and empathetic of the whole town of Westminster and not certain sections. Like the businesses were closed during much of the snowstorm sometimes, and I know you have to get them out. However, they were shoveled out. People who wanted to get out couldn't get out because they were blocked in. So I think we need to be more compassionate and plan better. Thank you.
Dr. Wack.
Overall, I think we did a fantastic job this winter dealing with all the snowstorms. Our Public Works Department does heroic work. They shift, well, they're always 24/7. They're out fixing things any hour when a water main breaks or something like that. But when it snows, they're out in those trucks, pushing the snow, clearing the streets 24/7. And that's all overtime, and it's expensive. And the salt this year was very expensive. There was a statewide salt shortage, and we had to pay a lot of extra money to get the salt that we needed in those later snowstorms. So, in terms of the actual managing the snow, our Public Works Department always does a great job. It's not perfect, and there could be things done better. But any other things that we do also cost money, and so we have to balance the fiscal impact of these things. In terms of how we handle it in terms of the city's finances, we budget for these things. We set aside a certain amount for snow removal every year, and we also set aside a certain amount for street repair. And we never get it right because these things are different every year. Who knows what the winter is going to be like next year? We know over the past couple of years it's going to be about this, and this is what we spent. So you estimate and you set aside an amount of money, but we're always wrong. So what do we do when we're wrong? Every time we're wrong, we have reserves. And that's the big thing that's different now than, say, 7, 8, 9 years ago, is now we have sufficient reserves so that when we get creamed like this past winter and we go way over budget with overtime and salt and equipment, we have the money already set aside and it does not have any adverse impact on the overall budget. So overall, I think we're doing pretty well.
Thank you. Mr. Whitson.
I think there was overall a lot of good things, but I'm sure there's always some poor things that were done. I know I was talking with some businesses on East Main Street, and when that ice came so suddenly, it was very difficult for the roads people to get up there. And I think there's ways that we can prioritize certain areas for businesses where they could maybe be taken care of first, since there's more parking lots downtown. So I've already talked with the head of the roads about that. But there might be some education that we can give the community as well. I know they're going to come with a truck, and it's going to be shoveled back in my driveway if I put it out into the street or the alley. If there's some way that we can keep, the snow on either side of our yard so that snow doesn't get, just blown back into, our way. That might be some way that we could educate. And there's always reevaluation every year. We can talk with businesses in the community, talk with people just like Mr. Costley. How can we do it better? And hopefully there's always room on the website for people to send in comments, to send in questions to the city councilman. And if we don't hear from you, we don't know. So if you have ideas, feel free to email us with your concerns and questions as well. And as far as what Mr. Wack also mentioned, this year we were supposed to get salt from the state, and they were close to a month behind getting us what we had requested from them. So they ended up having to use some sand, which is not as efficient. And I think it was the day of one of the last major snowstorm, we finally got the salt that day, but then we had a lot of rain come in, and you couldn't put down the salt. And then it froze up really quickly, which made it especially difficult. There's only so much you can do. Mother Nature has her way. But I think they do a lot.
Thank you. Dr. Becker.
I think the city did a great job this winter with what we were faced with pre-treating the roads, coming through, plowing the roads, laying down salt, in every sort of situation that we had. And we had a fairly tough winter this year, especially with the really cold temperatures we had that followed the snowfall afterwards. And again, we don't know what's going to happen from winter to winter. So as Dr. Wax said, we budget for what we think we might need based on the previous year's information, and it's never right. And you never have the amount of salt and supplies that you need, or you have too much and it's left over. And this was the year we found ourselves not having quite a bit of the supplies that we need. The part of the question with the potholes and infrastructure and fixing the roads, that takes a while. We had our last frost advisory, I think about 4 nights ago. And so we still were hitting some pretty cold temperatures even towards the end of March. And so those potholes are going to take a while to fix, especially this winter, because those temperatures fluctuated so much over those last several months. But I think that the city did a great job this past year with keeping the city ready to go, even through the snowstorms. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, we have reached the final question, and I'm sure that disappoints everybody up here on the panel tonight. The final question, again, blends one with a question brought in through our audience this evening. The question is, what has prepared you to serve in the capacity of council member? And can you briefly discuss your involvement in the life of the city, activities you've been involved in, city council meetings you've attended since the last election, which was May of 2013? And we will begin this question with Mr. Costley.
First of all, I want to say Pat and Larry Bloom and I have a great working relationship. He's brought me several dumpsters out many times while I was renovating my home, which actually saved costs. And the other thing that I wanted to speak about is outsourcing. If we outsource some of the snow problem, then we'll be able to cut costs, because a lot of these guys, as he said, were out there working 24/7 on overtime. However, what has prepared me for this position as city council member is my heart. I've always been out to serve people. I stop, I help people. I'm an avid church member. I attend Union Memorial Baptist Church in Westminster, where my wife and we sing on the choir. We have community activities. I've done community block parties. I graduated from Morgan State University with a master's in business administration and an undergrad in business administration, concentration in marketing and strategic planning. And I'm just about the people. That's why I'm here. One day I woke up And I was looking in the paper, and I kept asking the Lord, what am I supposed to do? I said, I'm ready to leave. I'm ready to do A, B, C, X, Y, Z. But I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I read in there, and this is where I'm at. So I'm about the people. I know I'm here to serve. I know it's my calling. I have a background in law. For the longest time growing up, I tore up the streets. But God has called me to repair the streets, and I know how to get these young men and women to the next level. That's why my kids are here tonight, my wife is here, and I encourage everybody to get out and vote for me as we exceed expectations and take our city from good to great.
Thank you. Dr. Wack.
So I've been on the city council now for 12 years, and in that time, I've learned an enormous amount about our community, as well as what are the most effective ways to help the community and continue improving our quality of life. And I've started to implement some of those things, and we've made great progress, but there's still a lot of work to do. In terms of my other activities, I've been involved with nonprofits and various volunteer organizations in our community basically since I've moved here, and we've been living here now for going on 18 years. Was involved with the founding and years of service to Access Carroll, which is a community clinic that serves the low-income uninsured of our community. I was a youth basketball coach for over a decade with St. John's Youth Basketball. I'm currently on the board for Target Community Services. It helps people with developmental disabilities. And been active in a lot of other community groups. So basically, we have deep roots in this community, my family and I, and I feel like I want to give back to the community. I want to continue giving back to the community. And I think I have some good ideas and sufficient experience to execute on those ideas and make a very positive impact on our life now, as well as generations into the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whitson.
4 years ago, joined the council, and that has been quite an education. I never realized just how much the city did, from water to economic development and things along that line. I think that has prepared me to continue to work in the community, as well as I can learn from what mistakes I made in the first term, and as well as continue to get involved in the community. And part of my desire, again, from what I said at the beginning, is to try and work with the community so that we can come up with a unified vision of where Westminster is going, and to get downtown moving more. As far as things that I've done and do, my parents were involved in the civil rights movement. They were on the March on Washington in 1963, and that's the main reason why we went to Park Lane, Park Heights, part of Baltimore, and we were there for about 8 years ministering, and then we came out here, and things that I'm doing right now, I'm involved with choir at my church, involved with Rotary, also just the whole concept of service has been throughout my life. Just growing up in the church, we were always, Dad always talked about, what the Bible say, do unto others as you have them do to you, and get out there and get involved and help people, and giving to all men that you receive. So I want to stay involved in the community. Whether I win or lose, I'm going to stay involved in the community, as I'm sure that everyone on this board of wonderful people who want to help in the community will stay involved. So that's where I'm coming from.
Thank you. Dr. Becker.
I'm a firm believer in community service, not only for myself, but my students who take my classes at McDaniel College. We do service learning in the community. We have a project right now that we're coordinating with Carroll Lutheran Village and Carroll Food Sunday, where my students are helping residents at Carroll Lutheran Village with some extra garden plots, where we're growing seasonal produce specifically for Carroll Food Sunday that they've requested us to grow. And so I believe in giving back to the community in which you live in. Ever since I arrived in Westminster, 2003, I joined some community organizations. I was initial member of the Film Lovers in Carroll County, the FLIC group, that is part of the Carroll Arts Center. I started to volunteer there right when I arrived. And I remember the very first foreign films that I went to that maybe had a handful of people in the audience, and FLIC is now in its 12th year, and the foreign films are sold out almost on a regular basis when you go to the Arts Center. And so I've been really happy to be a part of that. I volunteered extensively at the Arts Center for the Peep Show and the other organizations, the other events that they've had. Through McDaniel, I've been able to also lead students in stream cleanup. We do a stream cleanup of the Little Cranberry stream that comes through the city of Westminster. We've done other sort of communities, other sort of events for the city. For Earth Day, we have a tree planting that's coming up next week as well. I also have some professional experience in leadership. I was president of the Maryland Association of Science Teachers for a year, and I've also served on the board of the Maryland Association of Science Teachers for the last 8 years. I've been involved in the National Science Teachers Association at the national level, and as well as other nonprofits in the areas such as Target Community Services. Right, thank you.
And Mr. Burns.
Yeah, Steve, could you repeat the question for everybody?
Okay, hang on 1 second. What has prepared you to serve in this capacity? And can you specifically address your involvement in the life of the city, as well as the number of town council meetings and other ways that you've been involved since the last election, which was held in May of 2013?
Okay, well, in general, we're all up here because we have an interest in public service. And certainly it's a situation that combined with politics of the city, create a good central committee or town council member. I've been involved in politics for a variety of different ways in 30 years. I've spent a lifetime working hands-on more than anything else in a variety of public service type and community service type organizations. The list is fairly long and extensive, from the Maryland JCs, the Westminster JCs, and on down. And I don't necessarily want to bore all you guys with that. But the long and short of the whole thing is you combine that with your background. My background in management and as a claims adjuster, investigator, and as a development officer are those kind of things that give you the idea to go out there and look at what needs to be done, find out whether what the person telling you is good or bad at what they're doing, and make some judgments there, and then inquire. And certainly in my background as an insurance investigator and claims adjuster, you ask a lot of questions on a lot of different subjects. You don't become expert at any of them, but you do become expert at asking the questions that need to be considered. It's like a past president said at one time, it's not what your country can do for you, it's what you can do for your country. Insert city in there. But you got to be inquisitive. You got to realize what is sounding right, and if it is sounding right, why, and also if it's not sounding right, you start digging and finding out what an alternative is. So those kind of things, I think, help me out in asking those questions that need to be considered. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We will now be giving each candidate an opportunity to make a closing statement. These closing statements will be limited to 2 minutes, and we will go in the reverse order from what we made the opening statements. So, Mr. Whitson, we will begin with you. Mr. Paul Whitson.
2 years ago, an ordinance was passed by the council creating a landlord licensing program which cost the owners of properties a minimum of $20 per unit each year. There were many people at the public hearing that opposed this ordinance, many of whom were not landlords. It has succeeded in creating a higher cost in rent for many residents, as this cost is just passed on to them. Additional bureaucratic red tape for the owners, but little good that I have seen at this point. I stood alone in opposition to this ordinance, and if elected, hope to see its repeal. I simply favor greater enforcement of laws on the books instead, against the guilty landlords, instead of charging so many people money for the sins of the few. In closing, I want to make sure that you are aware, and we've actually talked over this somewhat, due to the federal mandates, we have had to increase the water rates. It was 11% this past year, and it'll be 11% for the next 2 years as well, raised. Last year's budget included another raise for staff, but no lessening of your tax burden. I proposed at that time that we have a smaller raise for the staff and decrease taxes to help balance your rate hike over the next few years, but amazingly was voted down. I hope that you will choose me, and I will do my best to keep taxes from being raised again and guard your rights. Thank you for your consideration, and may our good and gracious God guide us all during these uncertain days ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Next will be Dr. Robert Wack.
Thank you, everybody, for watching tonight and watching online when you watch it, if you watch it. So, as I've said before, my approach to serving the citizens of Westminster on the City Council is pretty straightforward. Number one, I am focused on the future. I want to make our community better. However, it's easy to sit back and throw rocks and criticize and complain about things that aren't good. But none of that means anything if we don't find solutions. Maybe it's because of my military background. I served in the Army for 7 years, where you only look for solutions. There's no pointing fingers or casting blame. It's you solve the problem. So the best way to proceed is to focus on solutions and working with everybody to find those solutions. And then the last thing is to execute on that. You can talk about what you want to do all day, but if you don't do it, if you don't follow through, if you don't make the hard decisions, if you don't do the research, if you don't make it happen, then you really haven't accomplished anything. I've done that. I've done that for you in this city now for 12 years. We've come up with ideas together with the other elected officials and city staff. We've done the hard work to figure out ways to make them happen, and we've executed, and we are making a positive impact on this city. I will always tell you the truth, even when it's not something you want to hear, because none of these things are easy. There are always going to be trade-offs, there's always going to be sacrifices, but it should always be for the greater good and for the long-term benefit of our entire community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Nathaniel M. Costley, Sr.
Lord, whatever you're doing in this season, please don't do it without me. That's all I want to say. I want to thank my grandmother from heaven, the Lord and Savior Christ, who has given me the opportunity to be here today. Without my grandmother, sometimes I don't know where I would have been. She passed away on December 15th, 2009, and I've been there. My grandfather passed away on August 31st of 2000, and he taught me that if a task is once begun, never leave it until it's done. Be the obstacle, great or small, do it well or not at all. And that's what I intend to do as a member of the City Council. I don't say if I'm elected, I say when I'm elected, I will serve the people. I am about the people. I have coached basketball, football, baseball, and track. Some of the sports I've never participated in growing up. However, I have always been successful at what we've done. We've won championships because I've been able to take a collection of personalities from different areas, different backgrounds, and bring them together for one common goal. I know that as a member of City Council, I will listen to you. I will be of the people, by the people, and for the people. I'm not here for me. I am here for you. So I encourage you to vote for Costley on May the 12th, and thanks for everything.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Joe Burns, Jr.
Yes, well, hopefully everybody's not bored to tears by now, and hopefully you all learned something about myself and some of the members that are running for Common Council. Like I said before, I do think there's some complacency on the council that needs to be addressed, that we need to start being a little bit more active, a lot more active is my case. I do plan to get out there in the community on ride-alongs and walking up and down the different areas and seeing for myself, which is the best way that I know to find out where the problems are and how to address them. On top of that, certainly May 12th is our election at 2 centers, and I would ask that everybody does come out and vote, because the people that you elect to the Common Council are your representatives. Now, I certainly pledge to be that representative for you if you choose to vote for me, but it also is a situation that, number one, if you don't vote, you don't have a say in the matter, and you can't complain. Now, on top of that, those people you vote in for the next 4 years will control various parts of your life, good, bad, or indifferent, and large or small, depending on who and where you are in the city. But I think it has a lot to do with everything that everybody come out and participate, because this is your franchise. This is your country. If we get complacent, like different aspects have become complacent, we're not gonna succeed, people. So I would ask that you vote for me on May 12th, and I would hope that anybody that would like to come out and help, certainly volunteers, either for myself or another candidate, and let's have a good turnout. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And finally, Dr. Mona Becker.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming out this evening to listen to the forum. I'd like to thank Mr. Wantz for moderating the forum this evening. I think we've covered a lot of different topics as we've set up here on the panel. And I think that one of the things is we need to think about as we move forward is that we need long-term planning for the city of Westminster. We can't stay focused on short-term issues that will not lead to our long-term success in the city. And that includes, our longer-term success includes things like the fiber optic network, encouraging the downtown business growth, and we can do that by continuing this calendar of community events that we've established downtown, managing our water effectively for our future, which is this resource that is always going to be present on our mind. And as city residents, you need city council members who are going to be working on your behalf. And I think I will be one of those city council members that will do that. I was honored to have been appointed to fill Mr. Dennis Frazier's seat in December, and I hope that I can count on your vote on May 12th and continue to serve the city for the next 4 years. And so thank you for your support and consideration.
Thank you very much. I'd like to extend my appreciation to each of the candidates who has joined us here this evening. Also to the members of our audience, I'd like to thank you for your participation and also for your cooperation tonight. And finally, a special thanks to the Community Media Center for providing such a wonderful venue for the event this evening. Let me remind you that this program will be broadcast on cable channel 19 beginning tomorrow. That's Friday, April 17th at 8 p.m., and will be available for viewing on the Community Media Center's website at www.carrollmediacenter.org. And to the members of the Westminster community, just a reminder, May the 12th, come out, please vote for the candidates. Thank you, and good night.